Hey everybody, and welcome back to this next episode of Deckgame. Before we go into the game, you hopefully read it in the title. There will be some rule or format changes, whatever it's gonna be, in how I will proceed with this series. So, as many pointed out, and as I thought myself too after the second game or so, if I only change one unit per game, it's gonna really drag on. I think it is certainly interesting to see play with suboptimal decks that are not Mimi. And then I assume that you are probably also interested in my thoughts on how to make the deck better without just turning it into a standard US or NORAD meta deck, if you want to call it that. So I still want to not just make one video per deck, but I think what you will then see by the time the video is out, or I guess I will read the comments and see what you think. But my current plan is to do 2 videos per deck. First video, I play the deck, and then I adjust the deck with multiple or many units, but keeping the flavor and keeping a unit or keeping as many units as possible that I think are certainly very, very viable, very good even, while keeping the spirit of the deck, the playstyle of the deck, and replace what is just as close as objectively worse 2 different units as they can get. There are not many units that are really objectively worse, like, for all intents and purposes. That's an example. The M113A3 is basically objectively better, but of course you can always make the argument, well, the A1 is amphibious, and there can be a new situation where that unit being amphibious can effectively win you the game if it comes down to it, blah blah blah. But I think you get the idea. What I, for example, do not want to do is, I don't know, replace the Hawk Pip 3 with the Patriot. Because the Hawk Pip 3, even though I'm myself not a biggest fan of it, is certainly not horrible. It is pretty formidable. In fact, Putin, I believe, I'm not sure if he still does it, but at least he used to run both the Pip 3 and the Patriot in his 1 versus 1 US deck. Let that sink in. So it's gonna be a tough middle ground that I have to find, but that is the idea. And after the second game, I will basically just revise it again and see if there's some other things that I'm missing. Again, just trying to not simply turn the deck into the meta deck of the nation or coalition. In this deck, for example, I would for sure keep like Heliobon infantry, etc, etc. In fact, let's do this right now. We're gonna adjust this deck as if we played 1 game, then play the next game, which will be the last one with this deck, and then after the game, quickly go over the deck again and then do some changes there, I should say. Alright, so let's take a look. CV, this is overkill. In fact, the M114, I believe I said it in the game on Punch Bowl, except for the front, takes just as much damage to HE artillery as the Humvee, because 1 armor does not reduce any damage of HE at all, outside of small arms. So this means that the Humvee in some situations is probably even more survivable since it's faster. The 2 front armor, of course, can be nice, and the amphibious capabilities. But I think they basically do the same thing. Plus, of course, it's tracked, and that's not necessarily a big deal, but if it's not really survivable, it's just not a very good combination. So we would either want an infantry CV or a tank CV. Again, these APCs, they're not the worst choice, but I think the Humvee, given the fact that it's 10 HP as opposed to 5 HP like every other Jeep, that is a big boost to it. Plus, it also has a Browning, which, believe it or not, can actually be quite useful on CVs for self-defense purposes at times. And if you want, you can always turn it off so it doesn't show itself. So we're gonna replace this. What are we gonna replace it with? You know what? Let's go with the M60. It has 2 top armor, 2 back armor. It's fine. The rest is fine. Infantry tab, we definitely only need 1 Heliobor infantry. And that's gonna be the US Marines 90 and the Frog. Delta Force are not really needed, although they could be needed for something else. But for one, in the helicopter, they're just too expensive for what they do. They have not very. They are only 10 men. They don't have the best anti-tank weaponry. Not that great. In the Humvee, they're actually not that useful either, because then their main role would be town fighting. But for that, we have the Navy SEALs, which I intend to keep as well. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. The rest, honestly, is fine, except I would probably put in the Marines in the LVT P7A1. Used to be like a staple of US, at least for team games. Not seen very often these days. I believe it got a nerf to 15 points, or was it always 15 points? I honestly don't remember, since I never was the biggest US fan. Light Rifleman 90 are perfectly fine. Assault Engineers we're gonna put in the better Humvee. And it leaves us with one slot. What are we gonna put in here? You could do the usual Rifleman spam, but I think this deck is more built around quality as opposed to quantity. So we might put in a Bradley with man pads. Maybe not really the most, how to put it, out of the ordinary pick, but I think it's still not used significantly or ridiculously often. I think I will go for the Stinger A, so we get more Bradleys. And here's the thing, which Bradley do we choose? The M2A2, of course, is a lot more self-sufficient, medium optics, 5 instead of 3 front armor, which, especially against autocannons, is quite a big deal. And on maximum ranges, that can mean that you will be able to survive any tank, one hit of any tank that isn't an M1A2. Because you need 24 AP kinetic to one-shot this tank at maximum, at the Bradley at M2A2 Bradley at maximum range. So that is something to consider, but it's also 10 points more expensive, right? Screw it, let's take the M2A2. Or we could... Actually, no. What I want to do is I want base Rifleman in the base Bradley. Let's put this in. I don't think it is certainly not a very, very strong, but I don't think it's as bad as one might think. We could upvet these. I think, considering you probably won't use these too often, I think upvetting makes sense. Let's try this out. Support. Honestly, it's fine. I think I would just change some veterancy. What's the Bison versus the LV? Yeah, we'll definitely go for the LV. It's cheaper and has more ammo. The 2 front and side armor is just irrelevant. M109 is honestly not even that horrible of an artillery piece. It's just the biggest annoyance is just that the low range means that on some maps it won't really be able to shoot a lot of things. And we're gonna keep this for now. Maybe I'm gonna, after I'm done with the rest of the deck, I'm gonna come back to this. Tanks, I'm gonna leave it for now. I wanna do some other stuff first. These we're gonna replace in, I would go for the V150, I think. V150 or Humvee, definitely not the M35. We need those to be able to get into the towns fast, since the transports can't defend themselves. And the M35 with its poor off-road speed and big off-road penalty is just way too slow. And the 5 points you save is not really a big deal when the infantry itself already costs 35. I think I'm gonna go with a V150. Again at 35 points already. You know, 50 versus 45 points. I might as well get this. Cavalry Scouts I'm also gonna keep. I will put them, I think I'll also put them in a wheeled transport though, in the Humvee. We want ground recon to be fast. We were gonna keep this, which is actually pretty nice. Should we replace this with the Kiowa Warrior, or should we go... okay, let's be real here. The best choice probably would be the Longbow. But again, if you only want this, or mainly want the scout option, and this can be fine. The Warrior would be a middle ground. Let's use the Warrior. I know that Firestarter really likes the Warrior, and I don't think it's really bad. In most situations, you should... let me put it this way, you should basically never build a US on our deck without the Longbow, if you have access to it. That's all I'm gonna say here. I think this is fine. We could put in the Ontos. Was the Ontos in before? I don't remember. I don't think it was. Put in the Hog, I remember that. Alright, Plains is a big deal. The main reason I'm gonna put in the Voodoo is for memes' sake. But I'm all for using, you know, there's a lot of units in the game where I'm thinking, you know, they're not really that horrible. People are, you know, overestimating or underestimating the unit, I should say. But the Phantom is just really bad. It's just bad. If it came on Elite, it probably wouldn't be that bad, but 35% base accuracy coupled with the fact that they're 4+5 HE missiles, meaning that if one of each hit, the enemy plane is still alive. And on top of that, not having a gun means you will always need 3 missiles if only one of your Sparrows connects. Unless you get a crit, and that's just not very good. So I think we could put it how is this for an air defense net? Tomcat for long range, Voodoo for short range. I think that's you can't rely on the Tomcat as your only ASF. So I think we're gonna, you know what, let's put in the Hornet instead. I probably prefer the F-15A over the Hornet. I think, do I? I'm not sure if I do. I'm uncertain myself, actually. Let's keep the Hornet for now. Harrier. It didn't do a lot of stuff for us, but we're gonna keep it for now. Wild Weasel, I think, is definitely the worst seed plane here. It still is a seed plane. Let's keep it for now as well. Tanks I wanted to look at. Having the M1A1 as the heaviest tank isn't as big of a deal anymore since we have the Kiowa as well now. But we might need a better anti-tank plane option. We have the Sheridan for long-range fire support. We have this to deal with like IFVs and such. But I would really like to get another heavier tank, probably. Let's replace the AGS because we have the combat. Then again, I really want to make... No, let's keep this for now because I actually want to make... I want to use this more. It has such a high DPS output for its price. We will struggle against heavy tanks, that is for sure. And you can't... Small is, I guess, the only other option that we could put in. In fact, you know what? Let's replace the Marines in the LVTP7A1 with small. It's not the best combination of small to get, but I want to give it a try. Then we have also some better anti-tank options in the infantry tab. Tua we can actually replace since we have the Bradley. For 60 points... Oh, we don't actually have the Bradley, I forgot. Let's put it back in, I guess. This is upfitted, we won't need 6 of them. We have rocket pods. The Seahawk might be unnecessary since we have the Warrior. What can I do with 2 more points? I could put them in a tank tab. Honestly, I have an idea. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna put in another card of M1A1s and just use these as our main tanks. Alright, let's quickly take another look. This is gonna be the deck I think I wanted to take another look at. We will struggle against rocket pod healers, although we do have the Hawk. We don't have Stinger anymore, which we had for a bit with the Bradleys. Let's just keep this for a while. It's certainly not the most ideal, but there are some things that I myself just also want to try out. I'm not sure if this. Let's get rid of this. Let's not kill ourselves here. I'm just gonna be disappointed. Let's put in the M2A2 with the Stinger. Get rid of the Tua. Now we have 2 more slots. 2 more points, I should say. Let's put in this thing. I don't think it's a. I think Mike Vincenzo, if you know him, uses this a bit, or used this a bit. I think US Mech or something is what he was playing. Not really the worst thing. Obviously not nearly as good as something like an Amex 10, but I think it can get some work done. All right. Let's search ranked with this deck. Yeah, I'll see you in just a bit then. All right, and we're back. It was only like a 1 minute search against Lieutenant. Okay, what is our plan? I think we will rush this town with some V150s here. Did I cancel the FOB? I accidentally did cancel the FOB. Some 90 millimeters. Oh, no, I'm not gonna cancel my only current CV on the field. Let's get an Avenger. Of course, a single rocket pod plane will absolutely demolish us. Let's get some B-150s with Navy SEALs that should hopefully mop up the town. We're gonna smoke right here. That should hopefully also somewhat block us against rocket pod healers. For the flank, we're gonna get a Cav Scout. This may be a bit expensive for the flank, but let's get one from it. And then AGS, is it overkill? Maybe not at this rank. Let's get our fallback. You know, let's try it out. Vulcan. Let's delete the Vulcan again. Two M1A1s. You know what? Let's try some memes with. Should we get a quad stack of M8? Let's get a quad stack of M8s. Just because we can. We don't have a lot of infantry. Or AA. It's gonna be our anti-helo AA. Oh Christ. 20 points. Let's get one frog to land there. Alright. There's another thing that I should say. Again, first of all, in the comments, put some suggestions down if you have any thoughts on how I should proceed or do something else. Or some more changes to this. Wait. Regarding the series. Alright. So this is oh no. I'm playing someone on my friend list. Oh no. Write down in the comments what you think that I should do or could do. Maybe you have some ideas or some oh god, sorry, I'm just a bit brain flooded right now, mind flooded right now. If you have any ideas, you know, what I could do, should do. Maybe there's probably some things that I haven't thought about, so give me your ideas. I still have plenty of decks, although you can still send in more decks if you want. Eventually I might get to them. But I think like 2, maybe 3. Originally I thought 3, but now that I think about it, I think 2 might be better. Videos per deck is a good sweet spot, I think. Show off the deck, and then, you know, make it better without ripping its soul away. That is generally the idea. All right. It's also been over a week that I played this or this deck, which isn't me saying, "Oh, I'm gonna be so rusty." What I mean with that is that I thought a bit about the series and read the comments first before I recorded this. So there's also a good chance that the next deck, which since this is gonna be the last episode with this deck, that the next deck will be more than a week away. Oh, it's no, Q. Go away, Q. And again, I might do some more changes that I think about. All right, they're not really meant to do all heck a whole lot. Keep the smoked off. I only want them to like murder infantry. Did I not tell you to go to the farm? Murder stack off. Oh god, you're gonna die. You're just gonna die. Oh Christ. Oh Christ. But yeah, just because, you know, me not responding to comments or something doesn't mean that I'm not considering this, let alone reading this. I read basically every comment, so don't be afraid to voice your opinion. In regards to, well, mostly anything that is related to this channel and my videos. Oh god. Oh no. I will get one-shot by any of these tanks, especially at this range. At max range I can survive an M84. Actually I can even, at maximum range I can survive one shot of them, of the 91 VR, just barely. Kind of want to just fast move these, but I think this won't work out. I will immediately lose two and then the PBs. Screw it. YOLO. Oh yes, actually that's very good. Actually that's incredibly good. Okay, let's hope there's nothing else that I'm gonna shoot at. Oh god. Oh god. Ah, okay, he broke line of sight. That is actually smart of him. Oh no. Don't shoot at the Palbrancis. It's one. Okay, you know what? They both shot at the same M8 AGS since they were too close together. So you know that's a trade that I'm willing to live with. Unless I'm gonna lose another one here, which I don't. Get some of you in there. Let's get another frog. What's this? Is it another? It's an L17 downrated? It's not an L15, right? L15. Yeah, no, that's AA missiles. It's a downrated L17. Let's make sure first. Maybe it's a different plane that I haven't thought about. Yeah. It's the bomber again. Definitely get some supplies. Just keep smoking this off. Get the AGS here. Get some Rifleman 90s in there. They're just ruthless. I think if you're really good with like maneuvering, which I'm not saying I am, because this is also a matter of how good your opponent is. No offense. I think he just got caught off guard. If you're really good with maneuvering and assessing, you know, the line of sight and such, A-main AGSs is like the type of unit that can do so much work. Which is maybe a the moment for you, but it's not for everyone, of course.
At the ready, sir. Good scout is one you don't see. Need a ride?
At the moment, I want to give line of sight to the V-Horror. Is he gonna say why do you need RT? Oh, I hope I didn't mind flood him with what I wrote. Keyboard is like a. I know last time I said someone tell me how to pronounce this. I think one person wrote Kiowa, so I guess it's Kiowa. I don't know why I kept saying Kiowa. Another one just wrote it's pronounced Kioawa as like one word, which is kind of hilarious. Alright, let's see. I wanna see how they do against these one armored transformers. Effectively how well they will do against okay. So that's one issue with them. They're slow. So once other healers, you might be able to like get out of range of AA again. I guess any healer would have been dead at that case. In this case, I should say. Okay, no, the combat killed these light stuff. Let's get another CVs, get some more M8s. But I think this was a decent showcase of M8s. And it also kind of shows that the enemy heavy tanks, if you can... And this... Honestly, I mean, it's not necessarily a challenge, but smoke is such a powerful tool. There's a nice video that Nick the Man made like 2 years ago, or 3 years ago even. If I remember, I'll link it in the comments. If not, maybe someone will remind me to, and then I'll link it. Or someone who remembers it will link it. Anything works, really. It's a really nice comment that shows how useful smoke is, not just for protecting your super heavies, not just for smoking off fire support in these scenarios, but also for so much more. It's an incredibly powerful tool, arguably the most powerful tool in Wargame, in my opinion. At least when it comes to... I'm not sure if micro-intensive is the proper way or proper thing to describe what I mean here, but when it comes to... I think it's a tool that is... I guess it has maybe even the highest skill ceiling, or one of the highest skill ceilings, if you know what I mean. Meaning that it takes a lot of experience and skill to get the biggest value out of it, right? Also, these fucking M8s are out of ammo. Get some more Hawks. I don't think I can get out of... I don't have a helo to sponge. If I had a helo to sponge, I can get the above 30 to fire the helo and then cross that bit of open field to get to the buff. I guess I could also just fucking outrange it with my Kiowa Hellfires. Not my Hawk. What's this? It's a tank. turn you off for now. The nice thing about the longbow is also, if you try to not waste its hellfires or other helicopters, if you have a gun, you can very easily just assess the range with fire precision, right? If you don't have a gun, you obviously can't do that, which is a bit annoying at times. Oh no 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 no. Are you shooting at the M84A? Please say me shooting at the M84A. I think it is. And it's also missing. Light rifleman! Oh, they shot at the M60 instead. Oh my god, I missed 3 out of 4 hellfires. I don't think it even got any missiles off, which is frustratingly annoying. VC? Oh, that's in voice chat?
The enemy is in range, so are we. Just waiting for a target to fly by. On my way to
Just trying to shit talk a bit here. Okay, did we get another CV? We get another CV. Get these out. Let's get a ham top.
spare parts, anything you want.
They all have very little ammo. Let's conquer some here.
Spotted something?
I don't have any bombers. I think that's the thing that I try to avoid stuff like, you know, longbow,
Station corps ready for your orders, sir.
nighthawk, etc.
Let's rock and roll.
To not simply build a US meta deck. But for some things like bombers, you just don't have a lot of things to choose from, you know?
Where do you want to deliver?
But I guess in the end the series is not necessarily to build only decks with
Transportation corps ready for your orders, sir.
purely units that you don't see very often, but I think it's more about showcasing units here and there that are probably not really seen too often.
Sky is ours.
Go for the buff. It doesn't have to be like a whole deck, I think. So I guess we're like revamping the series, or like adjusting this deck series as we go on. I think that's maybe a good way to proceed.
Down on them crawlers. Where do you need us, sir?
Brrr. Because I think. Oh wow. Oh okay, they're just shaken. Because some units just simply are kind of mandatory, right? I think that I also, you know, I think the reason why I also kind of started this is not just to simply copy Fireshadow's homework, you know, bad deck challenge, but I think it's also that if you have been to the bootcamp server, or like in general, it doesn't have to be a bootcamp server really, but there are just sometimes when people ask for decks or deck reviews or like people giving their opinions on their decks, right? Some people just either straight up say, hey, just use this deck instead, and send them a copy of theirs, or like some people just send them copies of my decks, whatever it is. But what I just dislike the most is when people just shoehorn new players or less experienced players, or just normal players into meta decks or meta versions of decks, right? Just, oh, change this unit to tell them to change each and every single unit to exactly the units that they have themselves in their deck. And I always dislike that because because there just are, of course, there are somewhat ideal decks, but they're just because, you know, a player uses, let's say, hold on. I know I'm all over the place with the commentary today, but I'm just kind of mind flooded. What I was gonna say is I don't like people shoehorning people like new players or people who want deck advice into like exact copies of each deck each and every time, because it doesn't really teach them a whole lot. And to get a grasp of units and decks, etc., you don't have to have like a completely 10 out of 10 min max deck. Like having, let's just take Yuriko, for example. You know, having, I don't know, Chasseur in its MX10P instead of Chasseur 85 in the MX10P or something like that. It's not really gonna change your you know, your learning process and your whole deck, etc. It doesn't, for a new player, it doesn't automatically make them, you know, suddenly good at a game, etc. Or having, I don't know, Milan F2 in the VAB instead of Milan VAB T in the VAB T20, whatever it is, you know. Stuff like this, sure, the F3 is better. And I'm not saying, oh, don't tell people to use the F3 over the F2, but there's just some certain units or unit types that are fine to use, you know? Sure, in most scenarios, the F3 is going to be better, but the F2 will do fine as well. And if you tell them to change every single unit of their deck, they're going to be so mind flooded. So that's why I think another goal of the series is that you don't have to have like a 100% min-max deck, and there are a lot of units in the game that are never seen or rarely seen that are still perfectly viable. There is a reason why they're never seen, but that's, I think, also just for one, because a lot of mid or low tier players simply look at good players and copy their decks without thinking about it, which is fine and can very well work. But at the same time, that doesn't really always show them why certain units are not chosen. No, Navy Seals aren't really, same with Formosa. Many high tier players don't really use them. Blitzwolf, for example, uses them loses to Formosa. But I think the reason why they're not chosen is simply because the Recon tab is just a highly contested tab. It's not that they're bad, they're just very niche. And having such a niche unit in the Recon tab is not always the best idea. But of course, if they fill the specific role of fighting town fights, then this allows you to adjust your infantry tab and use another or replace another unit with something that would otherwise be done by the Recon tab. That can change up your whole deck, and it's still basically just as viable as a normal US deck. Of course, not this version, but I hope you roughly get the idea. So in short, I don't know what I'll do with that game. We'll just see how it goes and then adjust it with each and every deck that I'll do. Really, really all over the place episode today. I'm sorry for that. So I wanted to do some more adjustments. So I think okay, let's put it this way. Some units that you probably should never really not use is stuff like Razzmann in the M103A3, because fodder is always good to have, and that's one of the best fodder infantry you can get. Coupled with the fact that you also have very good fire support in terms of vehicles, that is very, very useful. The rest is fine. This is certainly, I think, the biggest contention. What you could also do instead is use Canadian Airborne 90. Because I think if you want like Halo-borne infantry, you might want the extra range on the AT weapon. Let's take a look at the frog. So the range can be really nice. I know Putin likes them in the CH in his mech decks. But I think, honestly, Marines in the Frog might not be all too horrible. If you want to use your Hero-Born infantry to, like, in the opener or something, get control of a town or something, the 15 HP can really help to have that for longer while your reinforcements arrive. So honestly, that might not be the worst idea. In general, Hero-Born infantry, you, though most of the time, don't really want to use in a helicopter that doesn't do much on its own, unless you're playing something like a mech deck where you have the slots, or if it's a really good infantry squad and that's the only transport you get them in. But I think there are some arguments that could be made for this, especially since US is a deck where in reality you don't need much more than Rifleman in the M113 and maybe a card of Light Rifleman depending on how you play the deck. Support, Hawkpip 3 over Patriot is honestly it's a very viable decision. I think Greyhound also used this over a Patriot for a while. So this is nothing really, for one versus ones at least, nothing really too extraordinary. Sorry, I'm just having some hiccups here. Then the problem is, though, your medium range AA, right? That's something that US struggles with. Something like Roland's, Ozas, Strelaton M's, stuff along those lines. It's where US kind of struggles. You have the high end and you also have the low end, but not really the mid end. That's the awkward thing. The pivots is probably the best thing you can get here. Chaparrals, of course, work, but they're a bit sluggish and inconsistent. Wheat mortars, of course, fine. The speed can sometimes be nice if you're suddenly switching from one front line to another. And the M109 also is a fine thing, you know. If you want continuous barrage on a certain point, something like M109s is one of the best things you can get for decks that don't have LRMs or beacons, something like that. And when it comes to low-cost artillery, this might be honestly the best piece. The biggest downside, of course, being the range, which on maps like Nuclear Winter, certain parts of Punch Bowl, Highway to Seoul especially, I think, this lack of range can be a bit annoying. However, it's not nearly as big of a deal as it is on the base M110, because you do have 28 rounds. So what you can do is you can drive forward, fire a couple of salvos, and drive back to the fob. And by the time you're at the fob, you're not really wasting a lot of time by driving to your fob, because the artillery will need 30 seconds to reload the whole salvo. So that's not too big of a deal, honestly. You just have to make sure that you don't get picked off by something like an AMX 10 or something driving around, but that's usually not all that difficult. And then, of course, having the Stinger in the M2A2 Bradley means that you also have some sort of backup AA. Right, it also had the Vulcan, which probably is also a good thing for base defense, although you can also put in the CS. But let's keep the Vulcan in here for now. This means that we have actually a rather cheap AA tab compared to other US decks. Frog, I'll be real with you, you need the DAB. I don't know why I thought about this earlier. The DAB is just simply I would argue, the best AA hero in the game. It is fast, it has 6 HP, meaning it will only get one shot by either the T190 or an enemy AA missile that gets a crit. When it comes to AA missile, Hero-Born AA missiles, right? Something like Crotal, especially in the opener on rather short maps, small maps, if you're not too careful, can easily get into range of your DAB, so watch out for that. But it's probably the best AA hero because it's also affordable. Something like MI24V costs 100 points. It is, like I said, fast, and it has medium optics, so it's not too bad against tigers. If a tiger flies head on, I think you will have enough time to get both of your 2 stingers off before you die, meaning that there's a good chance that you can trade with the tiger. You just have to make sure to not attack move your AA heroes, because if you attack move, then as soon as the enemy gets into range, the DAB will try to stop, and when trying to stop, then while it's flying, it will obviously lift its nose up, and then from that angle it can't fire its stingers at the enemy helo, right? So that's why you very, very rarely want to attack move with AA helos. If the enemy doesn't have AA missiles on its own helicopter and you want to stay at maximum range, then that's something you can use, because you just want to stay as far away as possible while still being in range, of course. But yeah, it's just, and then even if it there are no enemy helos to shoot at, you have the medium optics, which is good enough, or at least something when it comes to spotting ground units in the opener. And it has the twin M230, which, while not on a turret, has immense DPS. And if the enemy doesn't have AA in the area, will just shred any ground vehicle that isn't a tank. So even if the enemy doesn't have any helos to shoot at, it's far from a useless helicopter. Where something like a Gazelle Celtic, it's not necessarily useless, because if you still have it on the field, you can use it later. But it most likely won't really impact anything on the field for the first 10 minutes or a couple of minutes, meaning 70 points sort of wasted, or like not necessarily wasted, but they didn't do anything in the opener. So that's why this is honestly kind of a mandatory helicopter. And yeah, definitely worth the price compared to the OH-58. Tanks, of course. Again, I think I showcased that the M8 AGS in situations can do so much work. You just have to really know the engagement ranges, and probably most of the time just have to use a lot of smoke. But if you can divide and conquer, then and just like keep the enemy squishy units away from the tanks, or if they are separated, smoke off one part of that and then just shoot at the enemy for like 5 seconds, get 10 shots out, it can do a lot of work. M1A2 is not needed at all in the US. You can easily get away with just DHA. You probably do want either of these. You can get away with just the IP, but you probably want, if you want to fit in the AGS, the IP might be the better choice. As a medium tank that is sturdy, mainly for infantry support, and big of enemy tanks with like your Cubas and your longbows. I think Navy SEALs, you saw how they murdered infantry. Granted, something like Fallschirmjäger 90, Corps Mariniers, stuff like that would also have murdered the enemy as quickly, because the enemy infantry was out in the open, but like they took like 2 seconds and the Pranzi were dead. And I think cavalry scouts weren't really showing off their potential in this game, which is kind of a fault of the map, but honestly they're kind of underrated. Rangers are really nice to have, and they're pretty good against infantry since they have a carbine. And I think in a game on Punchbowl, you saw how strong this autocannon could be. So I think, if I remember, I think I'll keep using the V150 over the Lav Scout. If I put even the Lav in the deck. Kind of feel the same role, I suppose, but the Comet can be nice, but it's just not on the same level as the Martyr. Someone was asking if the Comet could win against the Martyr in the last video. It can't. Not on even ground. Martyr has the same rate of fire, more higher stabilizer, more AP, and significantly more armor, and a higher suppression value. There's no way that the Comet would win. Yeah. Let's quickly get back to this. So in this case, you probably want a Cobra. So mainly, I'm stumbling over my words here. Sorry, not necessarily for the optics, but just to have like a rocket pod helo to flush out infantry from a town. If the enemy has no AA, that's where it's best at. And the optics, of course, can be useful, but I think that's the main reason for, and finding stuff that might be driving around the flank and dealing with it, like AMX Sense and such. Voodoo is obviously just a pure meme unit. I mean, okay, let me put it this way. It's not a pure meme unit, but if you want, let's say, a very cheap, fast way to spot if the enemy has helicopters somewhere or in the opener, the Voodoo is probably the best unit to do that. It's fast and cheap. There are some planes that are cheaper, but they're significantly slower. So that's, you know, the fastest, or like when it comes to, you know, the price is probably the best value for spotting healers that you get. So that's what it's good to get. The Weasel, the problem is just no stealth and no range. Means it's, if your enemy is decent at the game and can radar a micro the radar AA, it's gonna be tough to pick enemy radar AA off. I personally always have been a big fan of the Prowler because it's so much more affordable than the Raven, and you get 2 per card. The biggest thing of the Raven is just a good stealth, meaning it's so hard, unless you already know your opponent has one, and even then, it's so hard to micro the radar AA around the Raven. Nighthawk, it's just also too good to pass up. It's one of those units that I think you just have to have. And you can get away with only the Nighthawk as your like ground plane. I think the Thunderbolt is far from mandatory. It is a very good unit, but I think it also requires a certain playstyle, and it also requires air dominance. But what you can also do is, of course, I think the Harrier isn't too bad. You can also use the Hornet, of course, or the Cluster Aardvark, which is basically an F-16, the Danish F-16, same payload. Kind of underused or underrated unit in my opinion. So this is kind of a more flavorful Nora deck, I guess, with the AGS, Navy SEALs, V-150s, Marines in the Frog, M109s. I think a very solid deck, honestly. Different playstyle. In most scenarios, I'll be really with you, not as strong as the quote-unquote meta US deck, the way Putin plays it, etc. But I think that's not necessarily the goal of this series. So while this has been an all over the place episode, I think the goal is for now, or my thought for now, my plan for now, is to have two videos, 2 games per deck. First video, straight up play the deck. At the end of the video, adjust it, which is what I adjust, the first adjustment, like I did at the start of this video. Play it again, and then second adjustment, which is kind of like this, which is kind of like as close to a meta deck as it can get without ripping its soul out. So yeah. Again, all over the place here. I hope you can live with that. Put your suggestions in the comments, and hopefully the next videos will be less bad as this one. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully see you next time.